Why do we incarnate? Now, that's interesting. You are the ambassador to planet Earth. Your purpose is to continue to re-up and raise the frequency. And so from that, you find that as you draw closer and closer to remembering who you are, that resonance will put you in a state of servitude and selflessness. The main purpose and goal from a Taoist perspective, walking the planet Earth, is to continue to have the human condition remember empathy, fall in line with that unconditional love and acceptance that is the true frequency and currency of planet Earth.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have San Qing with us on the show today. San is a Taoist master and priest, and he's also a profound healer with more than 30 years' experience guiding and teaching people how to realize their true potential. San says he's witnessed countless miracles in the work he does and loves showing people how the impossible is possible. Along with some basic inquiries regarding Taoism, I'll be asking San about his techniques and opinions about healing, manifesting, and the energetic state of the world. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now let's go talk with my dear friend, San. San, always a treat to be with you, my bud. Thanks so much for joining us again. You're a returning champion.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing me back, welcoming me back. I'm always excited to spend time with you, my dear friend. It's effortless. It's just hanging out, and I really love it. Thank you so much for bringing me here.
Well, and when I'm with you or when I get to talk to you, I marvel at how you're one of those people in my life that when I met you, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a BFF going forward. And there are a handful of people I think we all meet in our lives where you're just with them and you're like, okay, I want this person in my life, and and they're going to be really a dear friend. And that's how I felt really the first time that I talked to you, within the first couple of minutes. So
yeah, we created a bond, and it's only got stronger every conscious minute. It's effortless. It really is. It's just always just something I look forward to is hanging out and sharing with you. And we seem to have really mundane, boring lives that we've got nothing to share. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what though? When the first time I met you, and I thought, oh my God, I feel like I've known this guy all my life, and I thought, God only knows what our past lives have been together and what kind of things we were doing and what kind of stuff we were stirring up. So anyways, lovely.
That's always something we can explore in the future if we want to.
I know. Yeah, past lives are so much fun. I agree. All right. I have legitimate questions for you, so I need to get serious. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. What's the difference between Taoism and Taoism?
Well, it comes down to the fundamental pronunciation. So, te is actually de. So when you say anything with a T, it's actually pronounced de within the pronunciation of like a Taoist Mandarin. Moreover, the pinyin that they use is sort of like a sort of a diluted alphabet or way to pronounce the actual traditional language. So pinyin is there to sort of decipher, so you can have some idea or understanding of what it is that you're speaking of. So whenever you see a T, it's actually de, not te. But I always say Tao because that's how I roll.
All right. So does Taoism differ from other Eastern religions like Buddhism? Is it just like a religion or a culture, or is it pretty much the same? What's that all about?
Well, that's a great question because more to the point of Eastern philosophy, which most people become familiar with Taoism in that sense. And then there's an element of that within Buddhism, but we both have our own strain of religion. And so I'm a Taoist, ordained Taoist priest in two lineages of Taoism. But then furthermore, you could delve into the philosophy and look at the scripture of Lao Tzu and go, wow, this is a great way to sort of frame my reality using the words within the incantations of the Tao Te Ching. So there is like two clear pathways within Taoism that people can identify with if they want to steer away from the religious aspect where I will teach people deep within the canons of Taoism, all the lineages, all the immortals, the gods that come within the experience of a Taoist path, or you just want to be a little bit more benign and feel a little fluffy inside by speaking and being intrigued by the words of the Tao Te Ching. So there's two paths. Now, Buddhism is very clear. Buddhism is, I sort of, they're very common. Taoism and Buddhism is sort of like, imagine Buddhists is like looking at life like a pile of dirt covered in diamonds. And every day they take another diamond off looking for more dirt. They want more suffering, more introspective, more shadows. That's really their true, what my Taoist, my Buddhist monk friends call it the dukkha, the distortion of reality. They're looking for the distortion. They want to get rid of it. They're looking for more. And so, that to me is a way to look at reality, and you can spend your existence in this very fleeting moment of consciousness doing that. Whereas a Taoist will look at life like a pile of diamonds covered in dirt. They dust off some more dirt and they discover another diamond, which is, it's good to be me. So it comes right back to the simplicity of laws of attraction and understanding, is your glass half empty or full? And, you can serve your reality up any way you want it. It can be pain and suffering, or it could be joy and bliss and complete serendipitous, harmonistic sort of epiphanies, which is generally how a Taoist likes to look at their reality.
Okay, I want to circle back around to that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
With how we create our reality with our thoughts and all of that. So is Taoism a religion like Catholicism or Judaism or that kind of thing?
Absolutely. We're looking to reconnect with what we consider the primordial mother, which is, moreover, within a Taoist path, we call it the Wu Ji. This is the center point of all existence. You find it in everything. There is no separation. You are me, I am you. And within that, you decipher your reality by looking at everything as a bellows. So the bellows is basically, that's how we see reality. Everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. And then your Sherlock to your Watson is to decipher that and find that center point, which some people will refer to as the Vesika. And so the Vesika is the center point of all existence, which would be God, source energy, Buddha, Tao, universe. But you can find that within the simplicity of the yin and yang. So yin and yang is a deciphering code that is universal, that identifies the merging of the polarities of what we consider this material, as a physicist would say, a dimension, a three-dimensional experience is what we are per se experiencing from a physicist perspective. So we're really standing in a fourth dimension if you use that model. But furthermore, as a Taoist, we look at it as yin and yang. It's not good and bad. There's a fundamental difference. We're not using that as an example, which would be more humanistic, using emotions, having an interpretation, having identity, having a belief system. Whereas as a Taoist, everything is yin and yang. It's either a polarizing effect of yin, which is the clear evidence of primordial mother, which is the existence of all things, and the yang is a byproduct. It's birthed from the yin. So within the yin is the yang, and that's the mirroring effect of these two oscillating electromagnetic potential, which as a physicist, you look at that and go, there's electromagnetism in everything. This is the currency of this reality, and that's how people look at it. And then you go deeper into it, and you can, how do you perceive things? What is the simplicity of your life? How hard do you want to make it, or how easy do you want to make it? And that's where you get into the mastery of energy potential, which is where the seeker starts on their path through inquiry and intrigue. They come up with some perception of reality, which gives them hope, and that hope merges into a belief system. That belief system then bears this sort of like growth and discovery of a knowing through their experiences that makes it true to them.
Right. Okay. Several thoughts on that. First of all, I love the first time you said to me, you mentioned woo, because I say woo woo all the time. And I got a bunch of grief for that when I first started doing this woo woo stuff. And you said, well, woo is source. I said, well, I must have known that.
Of course you did.
I didn't know it cognitively until you told me that was source. So I love that validation. I love when science catches up with woo-woo, because woo-woo's been around so much longer. That's number one. Number two, I studied Kabbalistic healing 30 years ago and energy healing. I did energy healing first and then Kabbalistic healing. And they do the same thing in the ancient Kabbalistic healing, which is Jewish mysticism. And some scholars say that Jesus learned how to do Kabbalistic healings. You know how the New Testament leaves off like when Jesus is 12 and then picks up when he's 30. And we're thinking, okay, well, what was he doing during all that time? And so there are some scholars that believe that he studied that. And they talk about the same thing. You want to get in the middle. You don't want to be on either side. It's the balances in the middle. Furthermore, I've recently read some research that talks about the human cell and the nucleus in the cell. And scientists have discovered that inside the nucleus of a cell is a black hole, which is the woo, which is source, which is how everything happens. And in the work that I do, I see black holes in a lot of stuff. You know, on the walk to heaven, we go through a black hole to get to heaven. I see lots of vortices where it's almost like we're going through a black hole. So I found that really resonated with me when I learned that the scientists had found a black hole in the middle of a nucleus of a human cell, which I thought was pretty cool.
It really is. It's remarkable because it brings me back to some of the alchemy practices that we perform within Taoism, and that is part of it. It's observing the death of a star, the rising of the red phoenix, which is the keeper and spirit energy of the center point of you, which would be considered your heart chakra. Moreover, we call it a dantian, and dantian means energy elixir, energy field. And so that center point, that observation, that chill we just got right now is like, aha, woo-woo moment. And that recognizes that center point is realized. So within a Taoist seeker, they start to understand that the source of all things comes from the void, which creates the seed of yang within the womb of the primordial mother. That is the creation of all things. And furthermore, everything exists within a 9 cycle, within a Taoist path. So all things are created and basically destroyed within the same path, but there is no limit. So everything will oscillate and contract and expand. Furthermore, the simplicity of that is you have to find that center point. So that would be more, you become the Luke Skywalker, finding the center point of the Death Star to open, expand. You have that one shot. So as a Taoist, when you find that primordial mother between the breath in and the breath out, you hold. When you hold, you gather what we call the riches. The absorbing of the riches is the qi. It starts to accumulate within the physical flesh, and then you're able to start playing with it like Play-Doh. You start to master that. That is the 0 point, the black hole energy. Someone would refer maybe perhaps a scalar wave. It's a frequency beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. So then you identify it as God, Buddha, Tao, prana, chi. This is a unified state, not a polarizing dual state, which is what electromagnetism is. So when you move past the electric magnetic component, you are unified, you're a whole. Scientists might call it singular, the oneness. And when you exhibit that and you have access to that through the path of alchemy, you are able to create what they call Wu Wei, which is effortless action, effortless effort. And then you stay within this frequency, because as a Taoist, we observe things frequentially. Everything is frequency. So when you discover that from the energy potential, your creation of that energy has a vibration. That vibration has a frequency. If met with a holding of that resonance through your own cultivation, oh, yes, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. Which, furthermore, within a spiritual New Age manifesting, teaching sort of perspective, this is the resonance that's necessary to replicate. Because, a lot of manifesting teachers these days will talk about, well, you've got to find the frequency. If you can create the same frequency, you will draw it to you. Well, what happens is you become it. And from a Taoist perspective, that is the present moment. And so all of a sudden, you are no place, no person, no thing. You are just now. And that will become evident as you are now the maestro. You command the imperium of this present moment, this primordial fabric of perfection, which is the mother. You are then able to, with your attention, intention, create anything or anything, any place, person, or thing can be drawn to it. So all of a sudden, you are not going to something, it is coming to you, and it will instantly be materialized. So this is what we call the rite of passage, which is a path of no return. And once you access that, instantly you are there. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to call your angels in. You don't have to get into a state of cultivation. You have merged to that, and some people will call it Brahman. They'll call it cosmic consciousness. There are levels where, and you will be in command. You will be the maestro, the master, keeper, creator of your reality, and it will be materialized instantly just through your attention intention. So the truth of it comes from this substance that you acquire. This is what we call a plasma. There is, and you're familiar with plasma. So that plasma will be evident. So someone might rewind back to something as simplistic as astral projection, out-of-body experiences, things of that nature, where they can sort of separate the physical flesh from the spirit potential, right? So when you get into working with that practices, where we teach you the frequency, and you can pop in and out of your physical body at will, is what we call Shen, which is the spirit, Shen projection. And so you're now commanding not the external world, the internal world through your attention intention. And so the substance becomes very palpable. It's like it doesn't, as you heighten your level of awareness, as you raise and ascend, it's not lighter, it's actually more dense. And this is where a lot of people get this misconception that, oh, well, I heard that I'm just out of body, so I don't experience everything. Everything is being registered by this physical flesh as a form of validation of what you are connecting with. And so if you take a moment, it always comes in the form of a thought, emotion, and a feeling that will be materialized. And what you do with it, of course, will determine whether you are a wisdom teacher or a wisdom seeker. And they're two are the same, but you always want to be in that effect at all times. The second you become the know-it-all, then you know nothing. And the second you know nothing, you know everything. Brings us right back to the bellows effect. And, I get students going, do you feel what? That's just blowing my mind. I can't even comprehend that. First, you must take the step in the path to the method of cultivating. So it's no longer, a fleeting moment, a transitory, like a blip. You are able to make it permanency, which is the path of no return, where it's your very action. You are a thought, feeling, and expression of divine now.
All right, we're going to need to unpack that. because a lot of that was above my pay grades. I'm sure my peeps are going to be going, huh? Sometimes I have to rein you in. I have to say, okay, I'm feeling like Scooby-Doo here. And I just want to go, huh? What? Okay. So you say a thought, a feeling. What was the other one?
Thought, feeling, and emotion.
Emotion. All right. And the thing about that is that when we control our thoughts, because thoughts don't originate in our heads, they originate in the ethers, and we pull them in here's my understanding, pull them on based on the frequency of what we're thinking about, basically our attention, and then what our intention is with that attention, right? And so we're pulling in those thoughts. I talked to a woman this morning who was just obsessed with an medical test outcome on a virus that she had, but she still was showing the antibodies on her test. And I said, are you having any symptoms? No, I wasn't seeing it. She'd been to a couple of other healers who weren't seeing it. And she goes, but the antibodies are still showing up, that kind of stuff and all that. I said, well, that doesn't mean anything. That's just the test. I said, remember during COVID, people that had COVID were told that the COVID test wouldn't work. It wasn't accurate for a year afterwards. It was going to have a false positive on it. I said, that's what's going on here. Your body's just clearing the rest of the virus stuff. And when I got her on my radar, son, this virus looked like those little squiggly wormies that you see in pond water under a microscope in the 6th grade, it's class.
Little tadpoles.
Yeah, well, they didn't have they just look little wormy things, and they're kind of squiggly. But when I watch a virus get healed, I watch the innards. Does that sound Southern for you? I watch the insides evaporate, but the carcass is left. And she had a bunch of, and my analogies are hilarious at times, but she had a bunch of shrivelly looking carcasses in her energy field. And I said, your body's detoxing. They're still showing up. And that test may not be accurate for a long time. So there's no reason for you to suffer over this test when you're not having any symptoms. I mean, why are you driving yourself nuts on this? And she goes, well, because I just need to know. And I said, don't do the test for another year. Pay attention to how you feel. Focus your thoughts on feeling good. Focus your thoughts on you have perfect health. All of that, instead of dreaming up all this stuff that makes you feel bad and makes you, obsess over it. So I'd love to hear your take on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, normally when I'm on the path of sharing the sort of like internal awareness of these types of things, how you're such a masterful medical intuitive, and you can see these things very clearly. For me, I'll do a quick scan of somebody and look at the excess and deficiency of the energy centers, and then that will be my crumb as a Sherlock to then go to the exact point that is indeficient or excess, which will present itself from an emotional state. You'll either get a virtual or emotional, and that will then go deep into what we call a material manifestation. So then you'll show evidence of, an irregularity that may come from an organ being out of the ecosystem of the harmonious frequency. So then you start to see these things. And furthermore, when you start to go into it, I will just charge an energy. So how I see it is you'll see them. And, this is the funny part, because this is sort of in the same realm as of distant healing, you're not really getting, I don't get into the weeds. You're very myopic, and sometimes you're not. It depends. You can really detail all these incredible things. I kind of look at it and go, okay, this is off. There's an irregularity, and let's just, torch it with a flamethrower. So when I get there, it's like, okay, so you see the deficiencies in their aura, And it doesn't, people are like, well, do you need to know my friend's name and how old they are and what they're doing? And I'm, no, not really. That doesn't, once you're in my field, it doesn't matter. It could be Joe Blow, it could be the president, it doesn't matter. This will present itself. And so for them, you see their physical body, and as they continue to be torched by the divinity of Tao, they become more phosphorus white until all evidence of any deficiency or excess just dissipates into the ether. So they're just phosphorus white light, and that normally comes from a numerical aspect where we will dive into the numbers, and through that, as I merge with that in that power, it becomes brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter until it has to hold that frequency. And I normally give it a couple of seconds. I'm like, okay, boom, done. And so then you go, holy crap, I feel complete. I feel whole. And it's so strange because you have this happen to you all the time where you're seeing it, you're healing someone real time, and you've got this beautiful smile, you're very jovial about it, you're making them very easy, they're not feeling uncomfortable because it's a very dramatic healing. What you're giving someone is changing that frequency that will alter them forever. You're returning them to that state. And it's sort of like the information is there. So,
and there's always an emotional component, 100% of the time. So we normally do that at the end because there's an energy leak that's caused by some emotional event, either in this life or a past life. Once we illuminate it, it eradicates it. They're working on full power, helps the body regain and maintain health. So we're doing the same thing, just in a different way. But there's always a correlation between what that emotional event was, whether somebody called you a bad name when you were 3 and it hurt your feelings. And we look at that as an adult and we think, well, that was no big deal. But it was a big deal to your 3-year-old little self at the time, or whether it's something really dramatic. But as soon as we illuminate it, it eradicates that block, which looks like a little kernel of unpopped popcorn to me. And then other life events, emotional energy piles on top of it, and then causes enough pressure, causes a blowout in this membrane that reminds me of really thin, stretchy saran wrap. And she was like, oh my God, because we came up with something that had happened when she was 4, or something that was an emotional event. She said, I haven't thought about that in decades. But once we illuminated it, boom, she was back working on full power. And I've never seen that membrane rupture after it's been healed. And I've done this tens of thousands of times, as you know. I'm not saying it can't, but I've never seen it happen. So I'm saying it's highly unlikely that it won't.
well, yeah, I mean, it's always done immediately. Like some of the most profound real-time evidence of physical healing are witnessed in seconds. If not, it's like, hang on a second, you're watching the flesh merge, you're watching things reset. And when you're looking at it with a naked eye, it has this wiggling effect. So it will wiggle and then it will reset, wiggle and reset. And you literally cannot believe this is taking place. It's almost like this merging of these two seemingly separate components, which refers to the dualistic perspective. But then when you see it and it's like, it's done, hang on a second, there was a legion there before and it was really crusty and old and had been sitting there. For example, someone may have had diabetes and you watch it just shrink in front of your eyes until it disappears. And you're like, I can never get tired of this. This is so profound, and I'm not going to use the words unreal because it's not. It's very real. It's very supernatural. It's very supernormal, as we would put it. And you experience these things, and when you do things that are such in a deep core subatomic level, someone will go, "Oh my goodness, I feel so much better," and then they'll go off to their doctor, do their blood work, and go, "It's all gone," which is the normal effect of hanging out with Julie. Is these types of things take place. But it's so profound to get that validation, whether it's an immediate surface level physical thing or something that's so internal at a subatomic level that it presents itself through that seeker that wants to see the blood work telling them that they're okay, even though they've never felt better in their life. It's like all of a sudden, it's like, hang on a second, I was hanging out with you. And it does permit, you see, we have this thing called soul retrieval. I'm not a big fan of it. I kind of just sort of like, we can go into the weeds of when grandma only gave you 2 cookies when you were 5, and then mommy spanked you when you were 7 because you didn't clean your room. And this stuff presents itself, but it's energy potential. And so I always remind people that's what it is. And it's nothing more than a story. So once we heal, which is just adjusting the frequency back to its original primordial state, it will disappear. And people freak out because you can still have the thought. What's really masterful for this is have the thought as a wisdom that you can refer to in relation to a past experience, that you gain more information about your own journey, and we remove the feeling and the emotion that are the 2 things that create catalyst. So the emotion has this profile, energy profile, that presents the feeling to you. It goes in that order: thought, emotion, and feeling. And people are like, oh, that makes sense. And that's kind of like a catalyst for how I feel this way. When this emotion presents itself in the form of anger, I feel certain, I feel empowered. And that's generally when most people are delusional and they make bad decisions, and then they deflate, and that this cathartic release of spewing all their stuff out, and they go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I was just having a moment. I had a little blip. Please forgive me. And, it becomes more evident of how commandeered you are within that state. And this is where I always refer to people: when you're emotional, you're suggestible. And it's something you need to identify as a seeker, that these are the types of things that will commandeer your attention, intention. And furthermore, you can start to believe, don't believe the hype, start to believe the hype of what you perceive your reality is, which is a disservice to the seeker. It's a disservice to the environment. It's a disservice to so many elements that bring together this present moment. And you have to be able to decipher it, be the Sherlock to your Watson, and be clear on what that is. And I always find that the alchemy is always the fastest way to identify these things, rather than have fleeting moments of delusion where you're having these thoughts that you believe are yours, until you discover someone like yourself or myself help you decipher this. So there's a clear messaging and a path for you to return to who you really are. And that comes in that cultivational mastery, where you cultivate the energy and you have imperium over it at will. That means you command it. You are able to move it in any direction at will, however you see fit. And that comes with identifying the frequency. And that frequency is the building block. So your light to wave to matter to particle, realized by your attention intention, creates this distortion, what we call the emotional content. So perfection is the primordial mother. That's what we call the 0 point, the black hole energy. That is evidence of perfection. It's abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And so from that cloth of primordial mother, from a Taoist perspective, you distort it with your attention intention in your very present moment. Then you must return to that frequency by cultivational practices. So the emotion and the feeling is not as important, even so much the thought, quite frankly, because this is identifying as somebody, as a place, as a person, as a thing. To acquire this imperium, this instant now, you must be none of those things. So belief systems will take you astray from your path, and they will distort your reality even more. You have to be able to self-realize, you have to be able to experience, and then furthermore transmute it into this space as a manifestation, magic, healing. These are 3 categories that most people become most obsessed with to validate the currency of this reality. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. And you get to certain parts where the energy for me is exciting, and I use that alchemy to help people realize and return to who they are. And then I have friends that are Buddhist monks that want nothing to do with it, that don't like energy potential, that want to sit there looking for more misery until they cannot find it. Hey, you say tomato, I say tomato. Whatever gives you a buzz or a high in your spiritual path, you must follow it. But furthermore, that is where you get down to the brass tacks, is that present moment.
All right. We're going to dissect that in length here in a second. And first, how does a regular Australian white guy end up being an ordained priest and 66th generation lineage holder and 126th generation linear holder of Taoism?
Funny you asked that question. What a great question.
Yeah, because you're not, you don't match the central casting Hollywood movie stereotype. Yeah. I mean, I'm waiting for you to throw something on the Barbie and feed your wife and your 6 kids, and I think of the Dalai Lama or somebody who's single who meditates on a mountaintop, all day, every day, kind of a thing. And you are the exact opposite of that.
And, this is so incredible. My story is a great example of really the seekers advancing, using intrigue and curiosity to create and find the truth of reality for themselves. Because what you really need to do, honestly, anyone listening to this podcast, if you want to start to embody really what nature of reality is completely change the behavior or your idea of what reality is in every way, shape, or form. So what does that mean? It means that right now I want the audience to get up, take their clothes off, and run down the street. And anyone that embodies that and thinks that's normal is probably on a closer path of self-realizing, because you're not being bound by judgments or perceptions of reality that determine who you are. And most people are still on that path, a journey of self-realization, where they're very self-conscious. They're not going to do that. That sounds insane. That sounds ridiculous. Oh my goodness, I would never do that. And of course, you're now framed in a mindset that really controls and commandeers your attention, intention, your inability to let go of limitations or belief systems may be problematic. That's a first sign. That's a great one. It's like, hang on a second, what? That in of itself will give you a clear understanding of where you really stand on your own path and what you have to do to now move forward to expand on that. And that's why energy is so exciting, because that's the currency of this reality. So when I was a young boy, I would say I experienced a lot of adversity. I was raised by a single parent who was considered a radical feminist from the 70s. She had a perception of reality that was a little unhinged. Talking to her years later, she was like, "Yeah, I was a little bit off center there." But she was part of the first revolution of identifying that academia is commandeering your attention and intention. The mind-melting manipulation was already being planted in seeds of that. And that brings us right back to the culmination of Carl Jung and this guy named Sigmund Freud. Freud. My bad. Was that a Freudian slip? I think it was. But this guy was very much single-handedly responsible for some of the more deeper dives into mind manipulation, using his metaphors and his understanding of what psyche really is, and psychology, which my deep passion with psychology is that it is a construct that's designed to separate you from your reality, because then you consider everything to be in your mind. That's even a conversation that the mind is separate from all things. So then we can go down that path, but quite frankly, it's understanding that there's this deep underlying tone that has been identified probably in the early 1900s, if not earlier than that, right back to a guy named Mesmer, who in the late 1800s was a practitioner of this thing called hypnosis. So mesmerized came from his last name. To be mesmerized is to be in a state of trance, as someone would put it, came from the last name of this hypnotist back in the 1800s. And so you start to, this is a non-verbal trance that you would get into a state of. And so most people understand that this ancient practice of trance is part of the very foundation and seeds of all indigenous spiritual cultivational practices, which starts with something as simplistic as meditation, which is being aware.
Were you exposed to that in Australia with the Aboriginal cultures?
Well, yeah. I mean, what happened was when I was a kid, I was left to my own devices. My mother was a struggling single parent who, in all intents and purposes, was dealing with the idea that society was not accepting her as a productive part of society. There was still this undertone, sort of like discrimination against women, and that's why she gravitated to the whole women movement and being a radical feminist and all these types of things. And to liberate herself, she engaged in, at a very late stage in her life, academia, higher education. I need to go and find myself and create some type of respect from society by being educated. So she went back to what we call university in Australia. She got many degrees, discovered psychology and other things, and she became a teacher. And through that, I was a latchkey kid, where I was literally taking care of myself at the ripe old age of 6, where I would go out on my paper run, and I would be delivering papers to people. I look at some of my children and they're like, "Oh my goodness, do I have to get up and go and get water from the sink? That's a lot of energy." And then I'm like, back in my day, let me explain to you. But that was a whole different world where you could literally not feel as though your child was going to be abducted or thrown into some type of nefarious sort of activity, i.e. things that I probably won't mention on YouTube. But this is going on right now. And now in those days, that didn't happen. So I went from that. I started at 6 for the first job I had. And by the time I was 8, I was jumping on a bus going into the city and watching movies by myself. And I really merged into the imagination and the curiosity of that and how exciting that was, because I would create my own reality. It's like my absence of a physical father turned into, Harrison Ford, Sylvester Stallone, Schwarzenegger, the magical golden age of Hollywood, when they were really making some incredible stuff that is timeless. And of course, that has since come and gone. But to speak on that more was then my curiosity with Chinatown. So I was obsessed with Chinatown in
The
Australia.
movie?
No, the Chinatown itself. So I would always go to Chinatown. So when I went into the city as a child, I would always go to Chinatown and, eat the food, immerse in the culture. I was like, there's something about this. I just love it. It resonates with me. I wasn't using those types of words when I was 8, but it was like I was obsessed. I had to be a part of this. I had to experience it at all times. And so that sort of led me on a path of then dealing with this social norm at the time called bullying, where I was being bullied. And, my mother was a feminist, didn't give me much insight, like go and kick the shit out of somebody or something of that nature. I was more, I'm a lover, not a fighter type of thing. And so I would eviscerate people with verbal interaction. I was, as you can see, I'm a little high gamma type of character, where I can really merge words together and give you a very clear definition of what that is. So I use that as my super tool to wade through all this bullying that today would not be accepted at all. If the same thing happened to me today, I would probably be a millionaire being paid by certain states for the abuse of power whether it be teachers or, other students. It was absolutely it was nonsense. But in any case, that led me more deeper into my intrigue into creating my own reality. And so by the age of 10, I discovered this thing called Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And this was a book that I started reading intensely. And I decided that was my lure. I wanted to become a bodybuilder. By about 19 or 20, I had this voice in my head. At this point, I was like a 300-pound gorilla, about 18, 20% body fat. This is the sort of terminology we talk in, the body fat. I was pulling numbers that were sort of insane, insane deadlifts and squats and all that type of stuff. But there was a voice in my head that I wasn't really clear on at this point. This was still new to me, but I let it guide me throughout my childhood, throughout all the imagination, all the creativity, the movies. And it said, find meditation. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is. We didn't have the internet. I can't look it up. It's like, all I know that this idea of meditation goes right back to these very odd-looking people that would walk through the local park in the city singing Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. So, I'm like, that sounds really strange. I'm a physical guy. I grab things, I crush things, I throw things. That's what I was familiar with. But I was very good at it. I mastered that skill, and I could acquire some incredible feats that most people couldn't. And it all started from my mind. And I was like, okay, so it keeps coming back to this. I'm feeling the effects of lifting heavy weight. Like my body is saying, please have mercy on me, my dear friend, because it's a lot of weight. Even though it's muscle, it doesn't matter. You're literally feeling the side effects of excessive weight on the body. And so I go looking for this. I find this meditation.
What do you think that voice was that told you to look for meditation?
Knowing it now, it was Lao-Tzu, my teacher. It was very clear.
Okay. And Lao-Tzu
is my teacher right now, who is basically the origins of the first channeling of the Tao Te Ching came from Lao-Tzu. So Lao-Tzu was a wisdom teacher, a prophet within Taoism history. And furthermore, it went from, the thought of his voice in my mind to very clearly hearing his voice and seeing him as I see you. But that's a clear sense and a development skill that came momentarily after this. So, I find this, I'm looking for this class, this meditation thing. I'm like, I don't do that type of stuff. I thought I was really like someone who couldn't sit down. I got to move around. I had no idea my ability to harness the present moment until I experienced it. So I found this class through newspapers, the good old days, guys, newspapers. There was newspapers. They used to print them up and you could find like the classifieds and look for things that you're looking for, services, odd things, people having like garage sales. That's what used to exist, just for my kids' future reference when they go, what is a newspaper? I have no idea what that is. Anyway, so I came across this offering of a meditation class. And I'm like, okay, well, this is better than a punch in the face. I mean, this is what they're telling me to do. I need to find this. And it was a unassuming sort of 50 pounds wet, grandmaster Asian woman that was taking these classes in a rec facility that was sort of in a suburb outside of Sydney. And you go there and I'm like, this is a ghetto. I don't know, maybe this is a prank. I get there. This is bad. This is not a good neighborhood. And so I pull in and it's just like you get that feeling. Something's going down here. Now, little did I know I was about to experience something more profound than anything I had ever experienced. But even though I look like a gorilla, it gives people more reason to gravitate to that said energy. So I'm like, even though I'm all soft and warm and fuzzy inside, and people are quite intimidated by my presence, I'm none of the above things. So I was like, holy crap, what is going on? Okay, so the door's up and I pull into the car park and I walk in and I look around and it smells like some old sort of like convention or what would you call it? An event center. It was an old dusty, would have been maybe a church in the past, whatever. It's a youth center. They're using it. It's a public place to congregate. And it smells old and dusty. And I look around the room and, there's half a dozen misfits just like me. Beggars can't be choosers. It's like, okay. They start sitting down and the Grand Master comes in and she walks to the front and I attempt to sit down in the lotus position. I look like an overgrown gorilla trying to grab my knee to form this lotus thing, whatever. I was in a lot of pain, Julie. I was like, this is not fun. What is this about? Be at one with whatever. That wasn't happening for me. So I'm sitting there, I'm all contorted, and I'm like listening outside where there's gathering of people screaming, dogs barking, ambulances. It's a ghetto. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's not a good place to be. And so I'm more concerned with, holy shit, am I going to get stabbed and killed on my way back to the car? Is this going to happen? This is really that took my focus of attention. My back's aching. And then these misfits are getting all in their lotus position. And I'm thinking, this ain't going to work for me. It's not going to happen. And so she stands there, and her standing is like coming up to me when I'm sitting in the lotus position, like she's literally eye level standing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my equivalent of best. What's the worst thing that happens? Nothing at this point. What am I got to lose? Take a deep breath, and I'm just like, I really can't focus on her. And then they're telling me eyes closed. When I close my eyes, I think of someone cutting my throat, getting out from behind my car. This is not good stuff. None of this is good. So it's like, I'm going to leave my eyes open right now, and I'm listening to the noise, and I'm focusing just on what she's saying. And she goes, now I want you to listen to my voice. And I'm like, okay. And then everything will fall away. I kid you not, for 15 minutes, she was doing this. And there was dead silence.
So he was moving his mouth for those of you that are listening and not watching.
And so dead silence. And I'm like, I have never experienced this much incredible, I don't know what you call it, power, whatever. But I am in silence. And that was not 5 seconds ago. I had all this, and I'm like, my eyes are open. My back pain disappeared. I just sort of hunched over, but I was just like, this is unbelievable. I've never experienced anything like this. This is like, I'm hooked. Whatever it takes, I will find it. I will discover whatever it is that is giving me this messaging. And about 15 minutes collectively, then her voice started to come back in. And I was just like, I'll have whatever you're having. Sign me up. I'm done. And so that took me to discovering or looking for a teacher. And she wasn't really available. And I found a couple of options. And within that same week, you go down the rabbit hole and you find these people that are offering all these weird things like, channeling and energy healing. And you're just like, this is crazy stuff. Like, I've never even thought conceptually in my mind that this stuff would even exist, other than my obsession with Hollywood movies. And at that point, I'd already invested in things like, let me see. I'd seen Karate Kid, The Last Dragon, Bruce Lee movies, all that kind of stuff. So I had a fundamental idea of what this mystical, magical stuff is. And it was drawn to me. I get excited by it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to find these teachers. And it started with that, which was the first time I ever meditated, which looking back at it now through Lao Tzu's teaching, this was something that was happening to me all the time. I could walk in and people would be dumbfounded. I'd walk in and step under a 600-pound squat and squat it 20 times and then walk out. And they're like, you didn't warm up. You didn't do anything. I just know. That's just what I do. This is this now moment that we talk about, this ability to be here. And so next minute I start channeling. I do this channeling class. I'm like, what is that? It sounds right, whatever it is. And this guy was, he'd invested 60 years of his life channeling and teaching people channeling. And this big old gorilla rolls up and he's like, you sure you're in the right place? Is this, do you know what this is? I'm like, this is a channeling class. From what I can see, it's like you channel things like energies, spirits, or whatever. And for me, that was conceptual, absolutely conceptual. But I was unassuming. I had no expectation. This is one of the things I like to remind people. When you are childlike in your nature, when you accept things at face value, at the now moment, things become realized. And so I'm sitting around the room and, there's evidence of BO and people eating alfalfa sprouts and hairy armpits and all that kind of stuff, long hair, dreads. I'm definitely, he's like, are you sure you know you're in the right place? And I'm like, what the heck? I just had the most profound experience I ever had in my life. I'm up for it. And that's that part of just accepting now, or the old expression, I'll try anything once. I think I will. I don't know. That's a broad statement. But I rolled up to this thing and they're like, this guy is some bodybuilder turning up to my class. I don't know what he's going to get out of it. I mean, he's about as enlightened as a tin can. I mean, really? And so he's assuming nothing. Now, it shows how much this guy is not really in tune with this so-called channeling. He could access it, and he was bringing an energy in that would guide us on this path, right? So I sat down and got in position, and they were priming us a little bit, and he'd play some music, and then he would give you the anticipated path of when you were going to connect with your guides, your guardians, your angels. And there would always be and I always even use that format today where I have at least two students, one receiving and one taking notes or questions, which is always a great way to start this type of stuff. And I just sat there and a rocket went off, like an amount of energy that was beyond this planet Earth. And it went through my whole physical body. I had no control. I was reverberating and oscillating and contracting at a level that people thought I was having a stroke. And then Latsu came right through and started talking through me directly. And this guy, you watched him go, you son of a bitch. Who are you? You come in out of nowhere. You're a Neanderthal. You are not on the enlightened path. And you just hit dead center straight away. And you and I know past lives, past experiences. It happens when it's supposed to. You're in the right place at the right time. And I had zero expectation. So it's like, holy shit. And I'm not only just experiencing this whole, it's like someone hooked me up to, electric cables, and I was getting supercharged. And for probably 2 years after that, any point I would merge into Latsu's energy, I would break chairs and most of the time it's like, until you get that muscle down, you're going to have this bountiful amount of contraction and expansion that will like literally dissolve things. I'd sit in chairs and go off like a rocket, and people are like, I want whatever he's having. What's going on here? What am I doing something wrong? What is happening here? And, you start to identify with these things and how it transmutes. But yeah, so that went off, and the second day, I was like, oh, we're going to learn, clairvoyant stuff. And I'm thinking, whoa, I've got this voice that's really more clearer in my head. And when I sort of sit into what they call channeling, I get all this charge of energy. People take sticks out, put marshmallows on the end of them, and start cooking it just from the radiated emission. They're getting so excited. And I'm like, I'm not crazy. These people actually identify with this stuff. This is real. And I'm like, I didn't have any basis. I wasn't like I'd been on the path 20 years and this is the enlightenment, the breaking point. I've had a dark night of the soul, all this kind of business where people start identifying with your ascension. And so I just accepted it. I was just like, it is what it is. They say that's what's going to happen. So I expect that's what's going to happen. And so
you were being primed with, you're using your imagination, being led to go into Chinatown in Sydney and assimilating into that community and getting more comfortable with some of its customs and all that kind of stuff, to reading Arnold's book, manifesting becoming a top bodybuilder, manifesting not only your body, but also your ability to focus the energy, but you didn't know what you were doing yet. And then you go to this little gal who teaches you how to meditate. And then a couple of days later, you're with this guy and you're channeling Lao Tzu, and so then you've gone from there. But I'm listening to you tell this story, and I've heard it before, but I hear it, you hear new stuff.
You hear
every time you
different
hear the
pieces.
story.
Yeah.
But it's very obvious to me how you were led, how all of us are led to whatever it is we're wanting to explore and experience in this lifetime. And so now you've parlayed that into what? What would you say?
I, within the same week, I went from meditating for the first time, channeling Lao Tzu, and then furthermore, getting into clairvoyant training from this same teacher. And he said, well, this is what you do, and you call in this and take a look at that. And he had his own system. I wouldn't use that and have never used that. Once I was trained within Taoist rituals, I used very, very method-based realizations using ancient practices that are thousands of years old. His was kind of like a mishmash. But in any case, he said, oh, you channel this, and you're getting this information, and if you look at something, this will happen. And, you can resort that back to things like psychometry, where you take an object and you hold the object, and from that object, you'll read the field and the information right down into the center core. And so psychometry was something more common. So when I started reading him, and he's the teacher, he goes, all right, well, you seem like you're gifted, you piece of shit that channeled Lao Tzu 2 days ago. He's like literally giving me this attitude. I've taught you a few things. Now read my energy. And I was like, okay, so you and your girlfriend are in the business of commandeering people's energy and their minds through groupthink within this teaching, and you leech their energy for your own benefit, feeding some entity that's telling you that you will achieve clair senses and other abilities like remote viewing and things of that nature. What is going on here? And this just came out. I was just like, I wasn't even thinking about what the information was.
You like you didn't get shot.
Well, he freaked out and he goes, whoa, okay, all right, let's go in the other room. And he's looking around and he's like, listen, wow. First and foremost, he couldn't believe it. It's like, wow, I gotta process this. Well, they're saying this energy that if you continue what you're doing, will die. And I'm sharing this. I'm like not invested in it. This is what they're saying. I do have a few issues with this. I'm like, is this confession time? I mean, is this real? Because I didn't know. I'm like, this is the first time I ever did it. It's like, I'm not expecting anything. I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm reading I have no idea. I was like, I'm just there. He's like, okay, all right. Look, I've had an issue, and I've been working with my girlfriend to stop this, but the energy gives me more superpowers, more insight. I'm able to read energies. I'm remote viewing. I'm doing all these other things. And I'm like, whoa, this stuff's real? I'm still like, am I correct? Is this right? And he's like, whoa, please, just stop for a minute. Can you not share this with the group? And I'm like, wow. I'm just like, this is unreal. And like he couldn't contain himself. He couldn't lie to me. He couldn't say, "Oh, you're full of shit." Like it was so off kiltering that I got it the first go that it blew his mind. And it was like a confession. It was like, it's like a verbal diarrhea. He couldn't believe it. He goes,
So
"Look,
where did you go from there? So we've got like a half an hour left. So there's other stuff I want to cover. Where did you go from there? How did you get to where you are now?
Right. So
with this stuff.
From that, I gave him his prophecy of what was going to happen. Within a couple of months after that, I had him in my arms and he died from brain cancer. And that was another unbelievable situation. But through that, I developed these psychic skills. 2 days later, I witnessed a physical healing where literally this woman's flesh was gangrenous and turned back to pink in color in 40 minutes under the tutelage of Latsu. And I mean, at this point, if I was, batshit crazy, I'm in that category at that point. It's all happening at once, one after another after another. And then furthermore, after that event, I had what someone would coin within the spiritual world as a dark night of the soul, where I literally had every thought, every feeling, every emotion nonstop for 5 days. By the third day, I wanted to kill myself. Like, I'm good. I'm okay. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Imagine being water tortured and exposed to all this information coming at you nonstop, 24 hours a day. You go to sleep, you wake up, it's still there. No matter what you do, it's there. I mean, I would go to the movies trying to distract myself, and something as benign as a naked woman walking out of the screen, I would vomit. I would throw up and I actually threw up on one guy that was sitting in front of me. I was like, because it had an adverse effect within the core of me. It was part of this unraveling and transformation that was happening nonstop. It's like,
so it was like a cleansing thing?
Oh, yeah. It was just an intense, like, I guess you could call it purification, whatever it was. I mean, I was like, really? Some naked chick is going to do that to me? You're kidding me. And it was like so visceral. It was so somatic. And, after I finished that, because in those days, we didn't have a cell phone to call someone up and like, keep texting me, return my text. I saw you read it. You need to. I was just having this complete overload of no return. And basically, by the time I got hold of that teacher, the result was, oh my goodness, that's amazing. We call this a breaking. I'm like, I don't give a shit what this is. I wouldn't put this on anybody. But it was a complete unraveling. It was absolutely everything. Now, from that arose psychic abilities instantaneously, where I could see everything at once. So I look
you
at
had to shatter the old for the new to be able to come in and for you to be able to hold that energy.
Maybe. I mean, I wasn't really committed to any sort of like cycle. And then furthermore, I went on the path. I found another teacher. I trained with them. I went over to China. I got ordained. And that took me on a path of teaching people the alchemical process. So I did sort of jump a few moments where I went forward to go backwards. So I had all these abilities before I even merged into the ancient practice of Taoism. But I can tell you this, Taoism alchemy is second to none when you want to realize the power of this potential. So, furthermore, leading up to where we are now, those two lineages that I was trained in as ordained priest, they have great insight, but nothing beats the highest level of ascension for a Taoist seeker is direct source, channeling. That's it. You cannot beat it. There is nothing that comes even remotely close. And from a seeker's perspective, I take people through 9 stages of their own evolution. Starts with physical body, energetic body, spiritual body, sun body, earth body, moon body, oneness body, ultimate body, and then being with all things. And so through that methodology, through that cultivational practice, you become more affirmed on every path you take as a self-realized experiential now moment that is not in this sort of like, it's what I call the spiritual, being bitten by the spiritual dragon. They get a little taste, but they can't identify or understand how to harness that moment, said moment, like, oh, I heard grandma, I had a vision, I could see people's auras, or I knew something beforehand. I had insight into all these things, which of course you understand these are variables of sensory perception, and ultimately they could be in the category of manifestation, magic, healing, more identifiable clear senses. I mean, there's really no end to the clear senses. If you have an imagination and then you can attach it to the substance, you can create anything. You can design any sort of like insight into anything at will. But there is a path of that realization. I think there is a problematic issue today with what the space we're in, where people get insight and they get a little taste of it. Like, oh, I'm an expert at reading people's palms, or I could give someone a psychic reading, but they're deficient in so many other facets that it becomes sort of like more a path of disappointment for many, because they've got one little facet and they claim they have the answer to all things. They don't give it to someone. And so they get more disappointed and frustrated by the fact they didn't elevate their sensors so they're all equal. That's part of energy potential. When you develop those, then you create the harmony, which is identified within that center point as the Wu Ji, the Wu. And when you're able to do that, all of a sudden you have access to everything at once.
Right.
So
I call that my buffet of psychicness.
Yes.
Yeah. Same thing. So when I was at your temple a couple of months ago, you were very gracious and you invited me to go to, what do you call it, your high altar or the altar of the emperors, or what do you call that?
Well, I'm going to be, it's the temple, the altar of the three pure ones. I'm going to be very clear. I'm in love with you. You're like family to me, but I didn't invite you. They invited you. I don't get to make those decisions. You were invited by them into that space. And that's to me, a profound situation to be in, because it's not shared with many. And you have to go through a long path to deliver that type of experience for many of my students and disciples. They don't see that type of access for many years. And you were given that immediately.
We walk up the stairs. We walk into this, what do you call it? Your altar. Your
altar. Yeah.
You guys, it was like, I didn't have any expectations. I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. I'm a good Catholic girl. I'm going up to see this Chinese altar of these emperor guys. So I walk in this room behind you, and it felt like I was in the movie 40,000 Leagues Under the Sea, because I felt like I was submerged in a submarine that wasn't pressurized correctly. It felt, I didn't have trouble breathing, but boy, I could feel it. It just didn't feel pressurized. And I was there and I said, wow, this is interesting, because I can feel it in my breathing. It feels very dense, which you were talking about before, that everybody thinks that spirit's going to be really light. And this was dense, that feeling in there. And so you said, you're all right, you'll equalize. And I did in less than a minute, I would say. So you're watching me, and there's this big yin and yang symbol in the middle of the floor. And I was just led to go stand on it. And you go, well, of course you're standing on it. It's a portal. I'm telling you, you guys, it was like, I felt like Elsa in Frozen, because there was this geyser of energy that went flying up through my body. And then, like in Frozen 2, she's got all these beams of light firing out of her. It was wild. It was like if you make a cross with an energy beam and then you do two diagonals to make a star. There was energy shooting out of me in that pattern that was going out into infinity. And I had these circles of energy that were going up and down my body. And I was describing it to you. And I was like, holy Moses, this is amazing. And then your statues of your emperors that you have, they look like they were smiling. And I thought, am I imagining that? I mean, because when I came in the room, they were just like, they didn't have an expression on their face, but they looked like they were smiling while they were watching all of this happen. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting a serious frequency upgrade here with this. It was one of the all-time most amazing experiences I've ever had in my whole life. So what was that? I mean, we've dissected it a little, but we had kids around us and your lovely wife, Jade. So what was that?
Well, this is when you really get deep into the magic and the construct, and you set up deep levels of energy potential that is realized through the ritual. And so everything is part of that communion. Everything is part of that unity. And when you create a sacred space through the methods that I teach people, you experience that. You will have that harnessing of that potential. And this is where I cast all the magic, go deep into commune with my teachers, and they will guide me through specific incantations and talismans that I create for whatever the purpose is, that goes way beyond just the simplicity of, I want to manifest a happy life. No, it will go right down to the last hair in relation to the construct. And you just layer that. And that's through that union. Now, when you see the statues, they're actually living. They're not, the spirit and the energy is within them. So you're experiencing the presence of an immortal, and it's real time, visceral, somatic, at a subatomic level, and it's happening to you. And so there's no question about it. You're like, holy moly, I'm in a whole nother space, a whole nother realm, a whole nother world. And that's kind of like what happens when you start to get deep into ancient ritual for the purpose of developing sacred spaces. That's something that's very much in the wheelhouse of a Taoist alchemist, is being able to be the embodiment of a dowsing tool, where you can identify ley lines and power centers and vortices and construct a sacred space for ritual. So, furthermore, that has been lost over the centuries within this human expression of what we call life now. But, any really powerful places, if you go to a church or a synagogue or a mosque or somewhere there's a place of worship, a temple, you're going to experience, if the person that is guiding that congregation has any molecule amount of insight from a higher teacher, you're going to experience some level of divinity, and it's going to be in that sacred form. And so it really becomes encapsulated, and so many people, right down to simple things like when people talk about, you must really appreciate, I'm going to use these realm of man words, I don't really use them that often, respect and value this sacred space. So things as simplistic as walking your shoes in from outside, you would never do that. This is setting up a foundation. You're literally transferring other energy potential into a holy sacred space, and you want to value that and honor that as to its highest resonance. And so when you do things like that and you create the space and the charge we're getting right now, the aha moment, you will be able to experience it, and it becomes palpable. So when you cultivate these energies, this is not just, I feel a little energy. No, you move it in any direction you want, separating the electric from magnetic. And you experienced a sacred altar where you're in the presence of these immortals, and they're there 24/7, and they show the presence through that charge that you get through your physical body. It's like, it's second to none. There's no question you are in a whole nother world. And it's like, hang on, my eyes are open. I'm completely void of any sort of extra curricular additives, i.e. Caffeine, alcohol, whatever. I'm sober, and I am experiencing resonance that is crazy. This is how powerful it can become. I always tell people you should start with some simplistic altar. I don't really normally move people straight into that, but you start to merge and unify with your embodiment of your relationship. And it's so sacred. It's so important that everyone has their relationship with whatever it is that they believe in and turn it into a knowing through that energy potential.
Well, the thing that I took away from it too was that I've been doing this for 30 years like you. So I was able to conduct the energy. I was able to hold the energy as it was flowing through me. And it felt like it lasted about 5 minutes. I'm not sure it lasted that long, but it felt like I was standing on that portal. Honest to God, I felt like Elsa in Frozen 2 at the beginning, where she's going into the unknown and she's throwing like these beams of light and things are manifesting out of it. I thought whoever wrote that screenplay knew serious woo-woo. I mean, that's one of my favorite movies as far as woo-woo goes. But the other thing is that I found that was so interesting about it was I didn't have any knowledge of these guys. I mean, I didn't know any of the tradition. I didn't know any of this other stuff. And to me, it's spirit, source, coming through different modalities, methodologies, teachings, all the same thing. And it was so profound for me that I remember thinking about it flying home the next day. And I remember thinking, okay, this is to show me how there are many, many, many ways to get to source. This was a way and I wasn't familiar with any of it, but it was confirmation for something that I had intellectualized before, but I really experienced. And I think once we experience things, we really get it. Because we can read stuff, we can watch stuff, we can hear people talk about stuff, but until we really witness it, we don't really get it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always refer back to the simplicity of it. If you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you are feeling. And that will present itself as the experience. And that becomes the knowing. And that's why the alchemist path as a Taoist seeker is so powerful, because you burn that in. It's a permanence. It's not something that's transitory or temporary. Once you activate the energetic potential, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So no longer are you doing something that is very limited and has a limited return, like the physicality, where you exercise and you put time and attention to it and you get said response. Oh, I lost some body fat, I got stronger, a better cardiovascular. But once you take your foot off the gas, all that regresses back to nothing. That's not what happens when you are on the path of the alchemist. When you alchemize these energies, what you experience is this only got stronger. I have disciples that have been on this path 20 years, and they're like, Jifu, it's stronger now than it was the first time I ever experienced it. It never leaves you. No, it does not. And so this is sort of like a very different thing. What you teach, what I teach, is something that you can master and literally expand on a daily basis and become more masterful at its execution. So developing clear senses and things of that nature become more and more solidified and fortified within your experience, so that you can translate it, transmute it, show people this is not just a fleeting moment. It comes in the form of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing. And that's the magic behind it that I love so much. I always tell people my job is, imagine Big Trouble in Little China and Last Airbender had a baby, and this is what I share with you on your journey to finding yourself.
Well, and it's a transfer of energy. That's what I teach my students. I say, this is 10% technique. It's 90% a transfer of energy from me to my students. And they're just kind of thinking, what? But they can feel it. They can do it immediately with that transfer of energy. And I know that that's what you're doing too. When my dad was dying in the hospital, he was in intensive care a couple days before he passed. He was put in intensive care and was in a coma. And one of his best friends was a priest who had left the priesthood at probably 30 years prior to this time when my dad was dying. And he had a wife and kids at this point. And I called him. His name was Jim. And I said, if you want to come say goodbye to my dad, come on down. It was like 11 o'clock at night in the hospital. And so he came down, and I think he still had his chaplain placard to go in the car windshield when he came down. And he came in and we talked for a few minutes, and then he did a blessing on my dad. And I was watching the energy go from his hands to my dad's body. Now, he hadn't been a priest in all those decades. And I said to him, you still have the power, don't you? And he said, you bet I do. And that was that transfer of energy, because that's what happened with you, happens with other priests and rabbis. It's the transfer of energy to them from, others that are in like what you call the lineage, whether that be another person in a church or whatever. But I saw that, and I always feel like it's a similar thing. All right. I could talk to you for a few more hours. And to wrap this up, why do we incarnate?
Why do we incarnate? Now, that's interesting. From a Taoist path, it's quite simple. You are the ambassador to planet Earth. Your purpose is to continue to re-up and raise the frequency. And so from that, you find that as you draw closer and closer to remembering who you are, that resonance will put you in a state of servitude and selflessness. And the main purpose and goal from a Taoist perspective, walking the planet Earth, is to continue to have the human condition remember empathy, fall in line with that unconditional love and acceptance that is the true frequency and currency of planet Earth. Now, on a bigger scale, when we look at the cosmos, every planet has its own directive. And so whatever is occupying another said planet will have its directive that all come together for the unification of the now moment.
Beautifully said. You're so extraordinary, and I just learn so much from you and have so much fun when I'm around you, whether we're in person or whether we're, talking on Zoom or talking on the phone or whatever. And I just cherish you and appreciate you and just love you to pieces. So how can people learn more about you and your work?
Well, the social sphere and the interweb are great entry levels, and we can find that through inquiry, and you'll find it on Instagram and social media offerings, YouTube, and of course the old way 126, the way126.com. You can find offerings in all different platforms, and I welcome the seeker. I welcome the inquiry and wanting to return to who you are. And that's a mastery that everyone should be able to attune to. And most do. The ones that fall in my path, I help them as their ambassador to remember who they are. That is my sole purpose and journey, to do just that. And I honestly believe with all those heartfelt words, kind words, sharing our relationship, you had me at hello. I love you to death. You are the most incredible being, and I'm so grateful that you're in my life, and I'm conscious of it, and I get to share incredible experiences. And we have nothing but the mortality and time on this planet, and we have so much of it. I'm so excited because I get a little sneak peek. So we got many, many decades, my friend, to enjoy this path. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And, just keep on inquiry, keep on curiosity, keep on finding whatever it is that does excite you, that sparks the, desire and, creativity, which is really who we are as human beings. We're creators.
I agree. And one last thing for for those that are interested in learning more about you too, is you have an app that's a phone app that a lot of people subscribe to, and it helps people raise their vibrational level. And it's an easy way for people to kind of dip their toe into this whole energy thing.
Thank you. Yes. You know, it's a microdosing. As we just mentioned, Julie and I mentioned before, most people are not like the human Pac-Man like Julie is. She consumes energy just easily, just brings it in. It's so easy. This is a mastery that she, as humble as she is, has taken a time to master, and it can be at will. You and I have a very similar philosophy in relation to this type of transmission and teaching. You can realize what I've experienced consciously over biological 30-year experience. You can realize it now in the presence of that frequency that Julie and I transmit. And maybe it's a little bit more inquiry, a little bit more curiosity. It might take you a little bit longer than the now moment, but you will find yourself. And it's all up to the individual. But within that app is about microdosing and regulating the energies so that people are not, you know, the old expression, getting high on your own supply at a 5 times ratio or a 10 times ratio, because I had that personally. I can speak to my experience where, yes, there are no coincidences, and we understand this, but there was that moment where I was absolutely convinced I can't continue this. It's just too much. And that does happen with transmission. But also, if I do speak on Julie, you program it just to give people what they need, when they need, how they need it, right there. And so that's also a mastery.
Yeah. Alrighty, everybody. Sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from Nevada, too, where San is. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time, guys.
To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.